What's going on, everyone? Coach Aaron here, back in another video to help you dominate a platform. Today we're going to break down leg drive and the bench press so you can press the most amount of weight without your butt coming off the bench. So let's get right into it. Alrighty, what's going on, my powerlifting people? Thank you for tuning in to another video. And if you're new here to this channel and you don't know who I am, my name is Aaron Khamesi. I'm a powerlifting coach, athlete, referee, and meet director. So I make videos here on this channel to help out those groups of people. Today we're going to break down leg drive and the bench press, as this is something that a lot of lifters have an issue with, where they don't know how to do it or they do it incorrectly and their butt comes off the bench. So we're going to go over some key concepts when it comes to leg drive. We're also going to go over some adjustments you may do based on how you are built and how flexible you are, and also go over what kind of shoes you may want when it comes to the bench press. So we'll start with the key concepts, and one of the main concepts that people kind of mess up is that you want to focus more on pushing horizontally versus vertically. So a lot of people just think leg drive and they think that if they push their heels or their entire foot down, then that'll help the bar come up, but that is not necessarily true. And oftentimes by pushing straight down, what will actually come up is your hips and your butt will come up. And if you do it too hard or you are too flexible and you can keep pushing up, then your butt's gonna come off the bench and that's gonna be a no lift. So we do not want that. Instead, what we want is we wanna push horizontally. So what I tell lifters is think about pushing your toes through the front of your shoes. Okay, and by pushing horizontally with the toes through the front of shoes away from the bench, the opposite force is going to be your legs and your hips are going to go towards the bench, and you're going to push all that weight up onto your traps and get into a bigger arch. So if you think of your bench and your arch and your bench as an actual arch or some kind of bridge, then what is holding that bridge is that when you arch up like that, you're putting the spine into compression, and then what is holding it from slipping out is one, your shoulders on the bench on one side, and hopefully chalk up your back so you don't slide on the bench. And then your hips on the other side, again, the friction between your butt and the bench are holding you. And also that leg drive, okay, of pushing your feet, like I said, the toes to the front of your shoes is then going to push the opposite way, and it's going to hold those two anchor points in place to hold that arch in place. So then the second key concept is not only you want to be pushing horizontally, but you want it to be constant tension. Okay, so you don't want to be relaxed the whole time and then when you go to press, all of a sudden drive your legs. From when you unrack the bar, and even for some lifters, while they're physically setting up for their bench press, they are pushing their feet into the ground, doing that horizontal leg drive and keeping that the entire time until you finish the press. All right, so you want those legs driving horizontally the entire time to keep tension in the quads and keep tension in the hips, keep the weight on the shoulders, and keep that arch and that decline that you want in the upper body. And you want to keep that in that entire time. Now, how much constant tension or force you are applying close to your maximum amount that you can push is going to depend a little bit on the lifter. And I kind of break down bench presses into two categories, okay? I call one a light and tight, and one a rest and press. So in general, the lighter, smaller lifters are gonna do the light and tight method, and in general, the bigger, heavier lifters are gonna do the rest and press method. The light and tight is where you control everything down and you're just barely trying to touch the bar in your chest, keeping everything tight. And you have that constant leg drive to maintain your arch as much as possible, and then you're gonna press. Versus the bigger people that do the rest and press will typically bring the bar down a little bit faster and sink it into their chest. They're not trying to stay tight and just barely touch on their t-shirt. They're trying to sink it down to their chest a little bit, have their body absorb some of that weight, and they'll typically have a little bit less constant leg drive, so that after the press, they can really drive their feet and drive their chest up and almost like heave the bar up. So they're using their torso and their leg drive to push that bar off the chest and then finish it off with their arms. So if you are someone who is a lighter lifter and does more of that light and tight method, then you want to be really driving your feet and having as much constant tension as possible in order to get as big of an arch as possible and maintain that arch as high as possible for as long as possible, where you're controlling the bar down to just barely touch and then pressing up. So for these kind of lifters, if you watch their bench and you watch their press, you will see little to no movement during the actual press because they already have as much tension as they're going to get in the legs, and they're not going to get much more leg drive after the press command. And if you are a bigger lifter and you like to sink it into your chest a little bit more, then you don't need as much tension. You want to maintain as much tension to keep your position, so you don't want your butt slipping out from underneath you, and you don't want to be losing your arch when you're sinking the bar down into your chest. So you're going to maybe be, let's say, 50 or 60% leg drive versus 80 to 90% leg drive. But then after the press command, you're going to really push even further to really drive that weight up even further and push that bar off your chest more. So for these lifters, when you're watching the bench press, you will see a little bit more movement in their press, because as they're bringing it down, they're kind of loading up their legs a little bit more. And then when they press up, they really drive their legs and push their weight up, and you'll see their weight kind of move up the bench and onto their traps more. All right, and when it comes to shoes, one of the factors is going to be you need shoes that grip whatever carpet that they're using for the competition well. So you want something that grips well and it's not going to slide underneath you while you are doing that horizontal leg drive. So you need good friction between the shoe and the carpet. And then whether you need heels or a flat shoe depends on how flexible you are and whether your feet can reach the ground. So if you are someone who's very flexible and your feet can reach the ground no problem, then you don't need the heels, because what the heels are going to do, they're going to raise your knees up higher. And the higher the knees are compared to the hips, then the more likely it is that you're going to be able to do a hip bridge and lift your butt off the bench. But if your knees are lower than your hips and you are already fully in hip extension, then you can't extend any further and raise those hips off the bench. But if you're someone who has trouble reaching the ground and you don't want to use blocks, or you're someone who's tight in the hips, you're not very flexible, then you may want to use the heeled shoes so you have more movement of where you can place your feet, where it feels comfortable, where you can touch the ground, where you can get a good leg drive, and you still won't risk your hips coming off the bench because you're not going to be able to extend your hips any further to really come off the bench, just because due to your lack of flexibility or whatever size you are. And you can actually test this out with either shoe and go into different positions. You can just lay down on the bench and you can set up your feet where you want, and then try and purposely lift your butt off the bench. If your butt can actually come off the bench, then that means that there's going to be a risk that during the bench press, when things get hard and you're really trying to push your legs and try and drive as much as possible, that your butt's going to come off the ground. But if you can set up your feet in a position, again, where the knees are very low compared to the hips and you're already fully extended in the hips, then you can try it out and you're not gonna be able to lift your butt up no matter how much you try. And so then that would be a good position with whatever shoe you have and whatever stance you're using to set up your feet. And then you can focus on driving your legs as hard as possible and not worrying about the butt coming off the bench. All right, so hopefully that helps you figure out leg driving the bench press a little bit better. 1, focus on driving the feet horizontally rather than vertically. So push the toes through the front of your shoes. 2, focus on constant leg drive. From when you get that start command to when you get that rack command, you should be driving your feet the entire time. You shouldn't be going completely relaxed and then at the press command driving as much as you can. If you are a lighter lifter and barely touches on the chest, it keeps everything tight, then you may want to focus on a higher level of constant leg drive so you can really hold your arch in your position throughout the entire movement. And if you are a bigger lifter who likes to sink it down into the chest a little bit more and rest in that bottom position, then maybe you don't need as much constant leg drive and you can focus on really driving as much as possible after a press command to really push that bar off the chest. And then make sure you're picking good shoes that are going to have good grip with the carpet and is going to allow you to get your feet in a position where you're really getting those knees below the hips so you can get the hips further in extension and really restrict the possibility of your butt coming off the bench. All right, and if you like the video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, share it with a friend if they're having issues with leg drive or the butt coming off the bench. And if you want to learn more about the bench press, then you can check out my bench press tips playlist where I have all kinds of videos going over setup, technique, exercise variations that you can use, and more. So I'll put the card for that above and the link for that in the description below. But other than that, I hope you guys are having a great day and I'll see you next time.